What the city is talking about.
The news that impacts you.
Welcome to the Montreal Now podcast.
With Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Welcome to another edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall. And this week we'll take a look at these stories. A life-changing surgery has allowed a Quebec woman who was paralyzed from the chest down to be able to use her hands again. We'll talk to the doctor involved in that surgery later in the show.
It is so incredible. Listen, who doesn't post pictures of their kids online? Everybody does, right? From cute baby pics to prom photos. We love to show our kids off. But are we oversharing? She says yes, and in ways that are risky that we may never have thought of. This week, you'll also meet a stand-up comedian who's taking a stand against anti-drag legislation in the States. How? Well, let's just say he looks great in a dress.
But we'll start today's show with coverage of the fire in Old Montreal, that tragic fire that has already claimed at least 4 lives. We had a chance to talk to someone who lived in that building and survived. You'll hear her story coming up right now. Can you explain, first of all, when you say you were in Montreal for a concert, where were you coming from and why did you choose to stay there?
We were coming from the Cornwall, Ontario, which is about an hour drive away. Mm-hmm. We were looking for something that would be more downtown within the walking distance to the venue. We've been in the Bell Centre the day before. And you know, when you're looking at the Airbnb, you don't question if it's licensed or not licensed. If you see it on the website, it occurs things that then it's probably going to be there. You can probably go ahead and book it.
Had you looked for a hotel first, or was the reason you were doing this in Airbnb obviously because the cost was going to be significantly less?
It's not significantly less at this point, even. I feel like there's a lot of people that are making their living off, working as an Airbnb tenants and renting those units. So at the end of the day, it doesn't come much cheaper than the hotel would have been. But I can assure you that I'm not going to use those services anymore. And from now on, I will be staying only in hotels.
Really? And that is because of what happened and you realize what could have happened to you?
Yes. Well, I probably wouldn't have booked a unit without, any windows in it, but if I were thinking back, remembering myself at 18 years old, I probably would have if I only thought that I need a place to stay for one night. I wouldn't, sure, there was a bed, I can probably crash there and it'll be fine.
So wait, your unit had no windows in it either?
No, we did have windows.
Oh, you did?
We were located in the basement, and we escaped through the windows.
Can you, just to describe what happened that night or that early morning when it broke out, what you were doing and what you did to get out?
So we were asleep, me and my husband. The way the Airbnb unit was located is the bed was sort of right next to the entrance door. And then when you go deeper inside the unit, there is a living room in there. But the bed was located next to the entrance. I remember walking inside the building, noticing that the whole staircase inside the building is wood, old wood. We were, a little bit down in the basement. There was only our unit over there and another door next to it that looked like a breaker room. It only had a sign saying staff only and no one else was supposed to come in there, so we didn't peek. My husband woke up at, I believe he checked the phone, so he remembers the time pretty well. It was 5:38 in the morning from a loud noise right outside the door. It wasn't inside the unit, it was right outside. He couldn't make the mind what was it? Did something exploded in the breaker room, or did someone, slam the door? But shortly, right after that noise, he started seeing the orange blaze from, the flames from underneath the door. And I woke up as well for seeing the fire, and I was like, is this a fire? No, this couldn't be happening. This doesn't make any sense. What do you mean? Is there a fire? And then, 5 seconds later, we're just, this is indeed a fire. We need to get out of here. So we got up. We didn't really pack. We kind of took whatever belongings were the closest next to us, throw them in a suitcase, close the suitcase, put on the jackets so we don't hurt ourselves with the glass shards through the window. And I got out first through the window. I got out onto the street. I looked on the right and I saw a guy who just jumped out of the window and he just threw himself out because he had no way out.
Oh my God.
And I didn't even understand how bad it is, I was still under the impression that, they will put it out and we can come back for the possessions, right? I left the car keys inside. So I was in that state of shock without an understanding how bad the whole situation is.
Alina, did the window open? You said you had to smash it. So does that mean that window in your room was not, you couldn't open it to the outside?
I honestly didn't even look if it opens or not. We just straight up went for breaking it.
Okay.
So you knew not to open that front door. You said you saw flames coming under the door, so that was for sure no way out?
Yes, that was the only exit. It was through the main entrance, through the main door. And by the time when I was getting out of the window, which was about 4 minutes later, I saw already the black smoke coming through the door and through underneath the door. So it was already pretty smoked.
Do you know what happened to you said you saw a man jump from the second floor?
Yes. We saw him getting the medical assistance almost immediately. We saw the ambulances on the scene in about 10-15 minutes later, and we saw him getting the assistance that he needed.
Alina, do you think you're still a bit in shock?
I certainly am, and the severity and how bad the situation is still, coming in with all of the news that how many people are missing. Yeah. Because on the day when we left, we were only hearing about one person missing, and now it comes up to 7.
Yeah. Had you met any other people in that building?
No, but I've met the people from outside, from the units surrounding it, because we saw some other tenants. We went to try to take shelter somewhere. Okay. There were fire trucks provided to take in the shelter for this specific purpose, and we saw people from the neighboring buildings that were in pajamas and also smelling like smoke, saying that they were woken up by the fire alarms and to evacuate. They don't know if there was fire in their building or no.
Okay, as a last question, because I have to go, did you hear an alarm go off at all in the building you were in?
No, I have seen the fire alarms inside the unit, and none of them had gone off.
This is Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
Time for us to check in with Chris Demakos. He's our CJAD 800 legal contributor. And Chris, the story, sadly, tragically, all this week, or at least for the last few days, has been about that fire in old Montreal. And we've heard various levels of government, our mayor, the premier, trying to, to some degree, I guess, blame each other. But then Airbnb seems to have been a constant here, right? The looking at them and suggesting that, wait a sec, if they're not scrutinizing the people who are listing on their site, some fault lies with them. So without necessarily pointing fingers, what happens in a situation like this where you're in a property that you listed on Airbnb, something happens, there's an accident of some kind, who do you go after? How would it work?
Right. So it's very important. What you just said right there is everyone's pointing the finger at everyone. And the way it works is this. If we want to regulate these types of industries, whether it be Airbnb or Uber or any other type of platform that people use to display their services, the question is how much liability do we want them to hold? And secondly, who's going to do the policing? Are we going to force the companies that are making money to do their own policing, or do the governments want to get their hands involved as well? And if that's the case, so far what we've seen, and this is where I blame our government here, they've been taking the lead on having people, get certificates, and obviously they want to get their hands on the tax dollars that come with renting these out. So if you take that approach as a government, if you're looking to capitalize financially on these types of transactions where an intermediary, middleman like Airbnb is being used, well then the governments have to also look at how they're going to police this. And that's something that they haven't done. For example, why not have Airbnb have their own employees conduct inspections and ensure that these properties are safe and secure and satisfy a checklist of requirements to be able to post? And if they don't, based on legislation, they are liable. That's why I don't understand why they're saying we don't have enough employees, we're lacking employees. Well, why not have the company that's actually posting these things pay for the employees and the work to get these things done? It shouldn't be the taxpayers that are paying for salaries of these employees to double check Airbnb. It should be the company itself.
You're listening to Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on the iHeartRadio Talk Network.
Informative.
Interactive.
And always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
A life-changing surgery has allowed a Quebec woman who was paralyzed from the chest down to be able to use her hands again. We'll talk to the doctor involved in that surgery. So our next story, which we both happened to see at the same time and kind of marveled at how surgeons were able to pull this off. So life-changing surgery. I don't think it's an overstatement.
It seems miraculous
to say that. It
honestly.
does. 27-year-old quadriplegic woman, her name is Jeanne Carrière, who had been unable to use her hands or her lower body after breaking her neck 2 years ago, underwent this procedure that in fact has changed her life.
It's been a difficult year. I passed from walking to wheelchair, paralyzed. But when I look back to my last year, 2022, it's been a great year because I'm alive. I survived. I see things differently now. My new life is beautiful. I love it. To open your eyes in the morning and be aware of that miracle, it's a magnificent thing.
That's her describing what she had been through and where she is now. It's amazing to hear that too. Remember, quadriplegic, basically from the neck down, had no use of anything and still able now to look back after this operation and say, I have my life back, at least to some degree. Dr. ÉLIE Boghossian is a surgeon at Montreal's Maisonneuve-Rosemont Hospital involved in this 9-hour operation that helped that woman you just heard, Jeanne Carrière, and she's on the line right now. Dr. Boghossian, thanks so much for your time today.
Hello, Aaron. Thanks for having me here.
Can you begin just by describing, so people hear her now, thankful that she's able to at least be able to do something she never thought she'd be able to do again. What was the procedure? What was involved in this?
So basically, Jeanne was paralyzed from the neck down after her accident, and there were a couple. So after a spinal cord injury, you have a couple muscles in the arm that are still functioning, but most of the muscles in the arm are not functioning anymore because if you want, the brain is the motor, and there is no more connection between the brain and the muscles in the arm. The nerves that are the cables that bring electricity from the brain down to those muscles are not getting any input from the brain because of the spinal cord injury, which happens to block any kind of electricity between the brain and these muscles. So there are a few leftover functioning muscles in the arm, depending on the level of the lesion. And so Jeanne had some muscles that what we call donors. Basically, we can transfer nerves that go to these muscles and plug them into nerves that do not function anymore because they do not get any more electricity from the brain. So we're basically bringing back new electricity to those nerves to reanimate these muscles. So we have a couple of objectives when we see patients like Jeanne. Some of the objectives are looking back into giving pinch between the thumb and the index to be able to grasp objects as well with closing of the fingers, and being able, for example, to open the fingers to go position the hand around an object to catch it, or simply to open the fingers and able to type on your phone or type on your computer or tablets, which are in our day-to-day lives objects that we use very frequently. So,
I mean, honestly, when it sounds like a miracle. It sounds absolutely miraculous. I imagine it's an incredibly complex surgery. How is it an instantaneous kind of thing, or do you have to relearn how to use your hands?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So basically, there are two things. It's not instantaneous. So these techniques were used for other types of pathologies, of nerve injuries, but were starting to be applied in the spinal cord injury population since, I would say, 2010, 2008. I think here we're one of the leading teams in Canada right now offering these types of surgeries here in Montreal for the Quebec population. So basically the result does not appear. After the nerve transfer, there's what we call axonal growth, which is basically the axon or the little cable, the electric cable that we've plugged, need to grow back and reach that muscle. And the nerve regrowth happens 1 millimeter every day. So basically, from the moment we plug it, you got to wait we start seeing twitches in the muscles around 4 to 6 months, depending on each patient.
Wow.
So you see a bit of variability, and then functional activation of the muscles will appear only 1 year after the surgery, or around 1 year, and the growth and the recuperation of the nerve and the muscle will continue over 2 or even 3 years, we think. So basically, there's a certain time where the patient, like Jeanne, needs to wait before they see some active motion and can then start using these new muscles, not new muscles, but new function back in their daily living. The other thing is that there's a lot of plasticity that is needed in the brain, because we are now using a donor into a recipient, but the donor is not necessarily intuitive. So you kind of have to rework your brain. Let's say you need to rotate your forearm towards the ceiling to be able to open the fingers. So there's a training that happens with our physios and our occupational therapists. So to retrain the brain to get this new muscle and a function to become more intuitive. But the more the patient is young, the more we have a brain's plasticity, and it happens very naturally. Movements are very fluid and natural after a year or two.
Wow. I'm just listening to you describe this and how long the process takes for her to get back to the point. And I had seen her actually be so excited with just being able to cut a piece of an apple. Actually, to be able to grasp a knife and cut that apple, it's absolutely remarkable. I did want to ask one last thing, which is, this is great. She can now do something she thought she'd never be able to do again. Is there a chance she could get more mobility back? Or is this pretty much it?
Are we talking about the hands, or are we talking about the legs?
Yeah.
You tell us.
Well, yeah, I was thinking, will she be able to have any kind of feeling back in her legs at all? Or are we not able to do that yet in medical science?
So there are some limiting factors for walking, actually, because you need multiple muscles and able to be able to walk. So it doesn't just take one or two muscles to have a safe gait and balance. And the other thing is that because of when the spinal cord injury is very high, you have no donors in the legs. The only muscles we can spare are in the upper extremities or the arms. So basically, there are a couple limiting factors that make it difficult to reanimate the legs at the moment. And also the distance of nerve regeneration is very long to get back. It's simple physics. The cable is too long to get back motion in the leg. So we still we're not there yet. Maybe one day we will have some medication that will help nerve regeneration to happen faster, for example, but we're not there at the moment.
All right.
What has been happening recently, there has been some nerve transfers that have been done for lower spinal cord injury patients to recuperate some sensation in the perineal area to regain sexual function. Okay. But this is still new and it's still innovative. So,
you're describing a situation where we still have a long way to go as far as that goes.
But amazing work.
Dr. Boghossian, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Very much appreciate it. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, and have a nice day.
Informative.
Interactive.
And always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Listen, who doesn't post pictures of their kids online? Everybody does, right? From cute baby pics to prom photos. We love to show our kids off. But are we oversharing? She says yes, and in ways that are risky that we may never have thought of.
We are going to talk about something I know apparently very little about. And when I saw the title, I kind of tried to put one and one together. I'm not sure I got it right. So it's called Sharenthood, which obviously involves the word parenting. So this is about sharing your child's
photos,
information
online.
And that's a thing now that's bad?
It's a thing now that's bad. Not now. I mean, it's been around for a long time now. When you think my daughter's 11 and I started posting stuff online when I was pregnant with her, right? So it's been around for a while. You kind of missed all this. Your kids are grown up, but your kids are probably now doing that. Let's find out more. LEAH Plunkett is author of the book Sharenthood, Why We Should Think Before We Talk About Our Kids Online. You may have seen her on Dr. Phil, and she joins us now. Thanks for your time today, LEAH.
Thanks so much. Wonderful to be with you.
Wait, are you a Leah or a Leah?
I am a Leah, but I so appreciate that question because not everyone thinks to ask. You had it right. I am Leah. Thank you.
Well, because I went with, in Quebec, we automatically go with Leah, and then I thought, wait a second here. Okay, Leah, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, I'm coming to you from across the border, so you are correct.
We appreciate your time. So why don't you tell us exactly, did we do a decent job of explaining exactly what sharenting is? Can you tell us exactly what it is?
You did do a wonderful job. I will be a +1 to everything you said and add that the way I look at sharenting is a little bit broader and a little bit deeper than the way the term is typically used. So I give you an A++ on the way the term is typically used and offer the following. In my book, literally and metaphorically, I look at sharenting as all the ways that not just parents, but also grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, coaches, and other trusted adults transmit children's private information digitally. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is on social media, but some of it is on other digital services, platforms, and devices, such as educational apps and smart devices.
What is at the crux of the concern here? Is it about their privacy and their future lives and what's being put out there, or is it actually about their safety?
The crux of the concern is first and foremost about child safety and about the tragic recognition that once digital information gets out there, it can be used and abused by bad actors. Let's say folks intent on identity theft or harassing or bullying or otherwise harming children. The other aspect of safety, though, is not physical safety, but it's about children's psychological and emotional safety, and also just their own safety to be secure in their own lives and their own stories, and to figure out who they are and who they want to be now and in the future, without having the world watching or being able to kind of go to the vault and get information after the fact.
My question as it relates to that is kids themselves now are the instigators in this kind of stuff, right? It's not even so much the parents. I wonder where the age cutoff here, Leah, would happen to be. If you're posting stuff from the time your child is a baby, and then eventually that child's going to be, looking around at everyone else is posting stuff and he or she will want to do the same. So where's the cutoff?
Great question. I think that parents are actually very, very involved in kids sharing decisions for a greater period of time than we give them credit for. I think, although there's a spectrum, right? It's different to take a picture of your 2-year-old and put it on social media than it is to give your 12-year-old an iPhone and kind of see what happens. And they start posting themselves. But as long as you as the parent are a gatekeeper in any way, maybe you're giving them the device, you're paying for the device, maybe you are modeling a certain form of digital citizenship, then I don't think there is a bright line cutoff. And I think parents are often more active participants in what we typically think of as kids' own sharing decisions than we recognize.
Where do you draw the line? Like, I'm thinking about sharing and then oversharing, right? And I think this could apply to to parents or to kids. What's the difference between sharing and oversharing, Leah?
There's a subjective line drawing here and an objective line drawing.
Okay.
The objective line drawing, I think, is the easier one. If you or your child is putting anything online that is exposing any kid in any stage of undress, even if it's seemingly innocent, like people in swimsuits at the beach, don't do it. If you are revealing full name, exact address, exact school, or other physically identifying information, don't do it. Certainly don't do anything that you wouldn't want to see replicated, in a child's principal's office or future employer. That's a more objective line drawing that has to do with safety and preservation of reputation. Then there's the subjective line drawing that every family has to figure out for themselves. Here's an example. If you are parenting a child with a disability, do you think on balance that the benefits that might come from being in, let's say, a Facebook group or an online forum, that connects you with other families with kids with the same disability? Do you think those benefits to well-being might outweigh privacy concerns? Quite possibly. That's a more subjective line drawing.
You know, again, as I hear you describe this, I think to myself, that whole idea of parents who are overprotective, helicopter parents, whatever we want to term it. So you tell your child at the certain age where you can tell them what they can or should or shouldn't do online. Are we sort of overstepping this as well and just making them fearful that anything they'd eventually decide to post is potentially harmful?
I definitely don't want anyone listening to hear me saying that parents or kids or teens should throw away their devices and go back to paper and quill. I'm very pro-technology. I love all the innovation and opportunity technology brings. So I would hope that outside of things like, don't post pictures in a state of undress, which I do think children need to be aware of the dangers of doing that it's not scaring them, it's protecting them. But I think outside of those few categories, my hope is that listeners will try to empower their kids and empower themselves as parents or other adults to be thoughtful digital citizens and just think, gosh, as with many things we do in life, there are a lot of potential upsides. So connection, creativity, et cetera, huge upsides of digital engagement. There are also some potential downsides. And because the downsides are often not fully and thoughtfully addressed, I worry that sometimes we as parents overlook those.
I'm wondering, Natasha, as I look at you, so you have an 11-year-old, and I wonder what you think, Leah, of the idea where you say to your child, it's perfectly okay if you want to put something up, but mommy or daddy would like to see what it is you're doing before you do it. Is that overstepping?
No, not at all. I think that's great. I think that's a very developmentally appropriate, thoughtful way of both modeling and engaging in digital citizenship with your child. I think there's also a version of that says if mommy or daddy is paying for this device, we need your passcode. I think that gets to be a little different as kids get to be, let's say, 15, 16, 17 and are showing themselves to be virtuous digital citizens. But I think absolutely the idea of let's do this together. Or sometimes what I'll say, I'm a parent. I have an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. And they certainly get on devices and are digitally connected. And sometimes I'll say things like, oh, hey, you just mentioned a new app. Before we decide whether to download it, can we do a little research together? And occasionally now, sometimes the 12-year-old will come to me with the research already done. They know that I like the site Common Sense Media, for instance, for good reports. And they'll say, Common Sense Media says this. And that's great. I love that. They are practicing digital citizenship. They're doing some research. They're making their case. And I'm much more likely to say yes.
My daughter's doing the same thing at 11, but I want to tell you, as someone who, I'm pretty tuned in, generally speaking, and I'm pretty considerate of how things would make her feel. But I posted a picture once that she was not happy with, and I'm trying to remember how old she was. But from that point on, we kind of decided that I would get her consent before I posted anything to make sure she's okay with it should anybody else see it or whatnot. So I would like to know sort of a guideline in terms of consent. What age is appropriate to start asking? And it's kind of a two-way street, I would also say, Leah, right? Like they ask your consent, like we were just discussing, but is it also normal for a parent to ask the kid's consent?
It is not normal. I wish it were. I think what you're describing is a pitch-perfect way of both, again, engaging in and modeling thoughtful digital citizenship. Because not only are you giving her that respect, you are making it more likely that as she gets older and has more freedom to engage online, that she will ask her peers before she posts.
Okay.
Good.
So I think that that's a really wonderful, very developmentally thoughtful form of engagement. I do think that kids have preferences about this younger than we might think they do.
Yeah.
And so, I've heard of some parents starting to do this with kids around 5 or 6 and those kids having opinions. Of course, I think it is important. Parents still get the final say, right?
Yes.
You don't want to take your child in for a medical visit and go to fill out the electronic health record permission form and have the kid say, don't share my data. And you're like, no, actually, we're using electronic health records now. Sorry. But I think that that's really thoughtful. I will say, though, it can cut both ways. I am maybe an under-sharent or a minimalist sharent, certainly when it comes to social media. And my kids, and I guess I'm sharing this now, I'm saying it publicly to your listeners and to you, they wish I would share more. They think social media is cool. Their friends appear more frequently than they do, which is almost never, and they think I'm sharing too little. Just can't win.
That's so interesting. Okay, we really appreciate your time today. That's Leah Plunkett. The book is called Sharenthood, Why We Should Think Before We Talk About Our Kids Online.
Informative,
interactive,
and always interesting.
This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
This week, you'll also meet a stand-up comedian who's taking a stand against anti-drag legislation in the States. How? Well, let's just say he looks great in a dress.
A bad joke is a bad joke no matter who tells it. An offensive joke is an offensive joke no matter who tells it. I was working with a Chinese comic once, and he came off stage and he asked me, he was like, "What do you think of my set?" I said, "I think he came off as kind of racist." He said, "I can't be racist, I'm Chinese." I said, "First of all, that's kind of racist." Second of all, more importantly, you did a joke about how all Asian people can't drive. That's a racist joke. He said, "Well, I could say that I'm Chinese." So what? You're not all Asian people. You're one Chinese guy. You're only one more Chinese guy than I am.
That is comedian Steve Hofstetter. He's known for his dry wit and how he handles hecklers masterfully. Last week, he was doing stand-up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, just days after that state had passed a new anti-drag law. So what did he do? He wore a dress on stage. Steve Hofstetter joins us now. Hey, Steve, nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So listen, how'd that go?
Well, my fans were at the show, and they're typically very, progressive and supportive, so that was wonderful. But the act of getting it on at the club was a little difficult because I go up at the beginning of a show, and, I welcome everybody, and then my openers go up, and then I do my set. So I went up wearing the, suit that I usually wear, and then I went back into the green room, which in that club is actually just a corner of the manager's office that is located through the showroom and then through the kitchen.
Okay.
And so I had to change into the dress and then walk through the kitchen and then through the showroom back onto the stage. And if there's one group of people that is very, very progressive and supportive, it is line cooks in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
So no one tackled you to the floor and ripped the dress off you, though?
No, but I definitely got some what the hell is this looks. And yeah.
Well,
so.
Why did you start what was the sort of impetus for you to start doing this?
Well, it's not really start doing it as much as I just did it the once. But it was because I think the new law is garbage, and there are people who will defend the law by saying, "Oh, it's just about protecting children." Well, no, it's not. First of all, Tennessee already has a law against vulgarity in front of children, so that already was done. And second of all, the law's language is so broad that it encompasses all people who are quote-unquote male or female impersonators or who can be perceived as such regardless of whether or not they're performing. Like the most of the law talks about, performing at over 18 clubs and things like that, and that's fine. But then it gets into or whatever the hell we want. And it makes the rest of the law very subjective, which I think is garbage. And so I wanted to be, supportive of a community that's under attack.
I love it. I love it so hard. But I wonder what kind of a risk it puts you at in terms of, well, you know what? I'll just ask you outright. You could potentially alienate some fans. Do you just say too bad? Then I don't need those fans?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's that phrase, the customer is always right. Well, I believe the customer is always right, but some people aren't customers. They're just jerks. So I don't need those people. Like when people, it's a bit ironic because my go-to answer when people, because, I'm very unapologetically progressive on stage and in my social media, and there will be people who will use that quote from Michael Jordan, "Oh, Republicans buy sneakers also." And they'll say, "Aren't you, you're alienating half your fan base." And I'm like, no. I'm alienating people who will never be my fans. I'm alienating people who will not find me funny, and so who cares? And the analogy I always used was, do you go into a dress store and do you tell people you're alienating people who only wear pants? You don't, because you understand that some products are specialized. And it's a bit ironic that, now I'm someone who wore a dress on stage when I use that analogy. It kind of hits a little harder.
So you said one time when I asked you, when you started, as if, is this going to be a one-time or two-time thing, or do you plan to incorporate this into your act, or are we going to forget about this in a week from now?
Well, I don't know if you'll forget about it, but I think that based on the comments I've received online, the marginalized communities that this was for are definitely not going to forget about this. And other artists who have reached out to me who plan on doing the same thing are not going to forget about this.
That's great.
And, if other states continue to do the same thing, and if Tennessee doesn't get their act together, yeah, maybe I'll do it again. But it's not, I want to be clear that I'm not suddenly performing in a dress all the time. I've had producers of shows that feature drag performers reach out to me and say, oh, will you do it again on our stage? And I want to be clear that this is not a performative thing for attention. This is not something that, because the response was positive, I'm suddenly going to keep doing this. Like, the whole point of drag is you wear what you want to wear, and you wear what makes you comfortable. And the same way that I have pushed back against the people who are like, oh, green is your color, you should have worn green. I'm like, shut up. I wore it because I wanted to, and that's what I did. And that's what people should be allowed to do.
Good for you.
I couldn't love this more. You talked about the positive response you got, but you also touched on the backlash that happened online. There's been some really ugly vitriol on there. How do you handle that, Steve?
Well, I handle it. I don't ever take anyone else's demons personally. I also know that society is progressing. The rise of fascism and the people who are, screaming and I apologize, Canada, that America has spilled over the border in terms of some policies, but, and in terms of some nutcases. Even the convoy was started by 3 Americans. But those people are loud because that is prejudice's death rattle. The reason that, we're hearing more of it lately is because it's being stamped out. It's because society will progress. And the fact of the matter is, there are people who fought against the Civil Rights Act who pretended they didn't. But now that everything you post online is going to be there forever, they can't. And so in 20 years from now, when this becomes a moot point and everybody in society pretty much agrees, you're going to have the people who are writing hateful things online. That's still going to be searchable. I almost said Googleable, but who knows what the company will be by then.
That's true.
But you understand my point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen.
Let them out themselves as hateful bigots. That'll be around forever, and that'll stick with them the rest of their life.
I sure hope you're right.
Whew.
Steve Hofstetter, if people want to check you out online, Steve, where are they going?
They can go to stevehofstetter.com. I actually have a huge Canadian tour coming up this summer. 16 cities, including Montreal.
Cool.
August 24th.
I can't wait to be back. As someone who grew up in New York City, knowing that the 2 biggest things in Montreal are bagels and smoked meat, I'm like, absolutely, let's go.
Come see us.
Yeah, absolutely.
August
Come see us when you're here.
24th at the Fairmount Theater. Again, stevehofstetter.com. Come visit us, okay, Steve?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Steve. Steve Hofstetter, if you want to check it out, that's Hoff like H-O-F and Stetter like Stetter. That wraps up this edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand, along with Natasha Hall, and we will see you next week.
Have a great week.
This has been the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall
Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6
on CJAD 800
or through the iHeartRadio app.